So it is all has behind it has a very subtle mind which arranges things and repeat always things in a different way. We learn things by repeating in a different way, and this is what he does. Always make us understand how to go from our condition, which is ignorance, either deep ignorance or little less deep ignorance, to clarity, and again from clarity to ignorance, and again from ignorance to clarity. This is what we have learned. There are about three ways of explaining, which we have encountered. All can be interconnected. They all have things in common, and they always bring a new perspectives. The last perspective was, if you remember, the perspective from the gross aspects of awareness to a more and more subtle aspect of awareness, and the ultimate awareness belongs to the perfect enlightenment of the Buddha, which is called omniscience in all aspects. So the Arahat has omniscience, but not in all aspects, not in regard to the worldly phenomena. The Buddha has omniscience in regard to all aspects. So he is very clear about the past, about the present, about the future, not what the neighbor is going to eat for lunch tomorrow, but what are the consequences of the actions in the future, and what actions bring what kind of consequences. The Buddha is quite clear, and he can see this directly. The Buddha can see this directly because his mind is inseparable from, last time we have finished here, from understanding of one karma, one dharma dhatu, I fa jie, the meaning of one dharma dhatu. The Buddha is very clear about it. We have learned in the beginning that the Dharma is one mind, and one mind is one Dharma dhatu, and one Dharma dhatu is hidden from us because we don't see the true nature of the mind being inseparable from suchness, being the suchness itself. And the suchness is also our experience of the worldly phenomena, and the suchness is also our experience of the ultimate reality. This is the teaching of especially of the Hawaiian tradition, of the Avatamsaka tradition. So when you want to learn deeply about the scripture, you can read Fa Zhang's commentary, which is very fascinating, which explains how actually the worldly experience and the ultimate experience cannot be separated, and how we should understanding with our own limited wisdom. So we understand that actually we are never separated from one Dharma Dhatu, from I Fa Jie. We understand it when we practice diligently the 10 kinds of faith we have explained The 10 kinds of faith include in them the right mindfulness, right effort, right awareness, the right scholarship, the right wisdom from hearing, the right wisdom from contemplation, the right samadhi. All is included in the faith. That's why awakening of faith in Mahayana. And Mahayana is not something different from our mind, because our mind is namely the Mahayana, because its essence and its characteristics, essence and characteristics cannot be separated. Its essence, its characteristic, its use is always connected together, like the worldly and the supermundane reality is not two realities, but always one reality. But we don't see it because our awareness is limited. But we start to get intuition of it when we have realized the disciple realization, disciple body, and when we have realized the faith, that we have no doubt that the reality is one. Okay? So reality is one, that we understand by faith. We strengthen the faith by staying Guten Tag, für euch ist Guten Tag, für uns schon Guten Abend. So we understand this reality when we have realized our faith in bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means that we actually direct our mind so that it does not separate from the worldly reality and the supreme reality. One Dharma Dhatu. It goes even to the extreme, which is not necessary, like Lankavatara Sutra, which is a base of the Zen tradition, even teaches for a bodhisattva, it is much more instructive and much more convenient to go to hell than to go to nirvana. If he goes to nirvana, then he will not realize for innumerable kalpas that all is just one mind. But if he goes to hell, it may be very helpful for his bodhicitta when he experiences the suffering and shares it with others. So when we have realized our faith and we then dwell in bodhicitta and practice the perfections according to bodhicitta, we can practice perfections. The disciples also practice perfection, the strength of realization. This is not only taught in Mahayana, this is taught also in Theravada. The strength of our body, of our realization, depends on the strength of our perfections, our paramis. So, so just like we have a small disciple, the middle disciple, and the great disciples, we have the small bodhisattvas, the great bodhisattvas, and the very, very great, the greatest bodhisattva, which is Buddha. So when we stay in bodhicitta, because we have realized the faith, then we can practice according to bodhicitta the 6 paramis. That means we practice with the great wisdom, great wisdom is a wisdom that there is no separation, which is true. Everything exists in mutual relation, and mutual relation means inseparable. Nothing is really separated from the other. This is also the teaching of the Hawaiian school, and no doubt Ashwagosha is considered to be the first patriarch of the Hawaiian school, which uh, uses a very, very subtle logic to guide us to this principle that everything we experience is actually one Dharmadhatu. And from the very beginning, that's where we are, only we lack awareness of it. So, in order to practice paramis in the correct way, we need this great wisdom, which is sometimes called transcendental wisdom, but better to translate it great wisdom, because we don't really transcend the world. We, through the world, we understand the ultimate reality as being something inseparable from the world. And then, when we have attained what is called the pure mind, this is in the Buddhist sutras, in Mahayana sutras, the bodhisattva's realization is the realization of the pure mind. When we realize the pure mind, that means the bodhisattva stage, or the bodhisattva ground, or the bodhisattva base, where we don't need to struggle, not to divide between ourselves and others, not to divide between the worldly truth and the ultimate truth. We don't need to struggle. This knowledge appears to us naturally. That is a pure mind. So when we have attained the pure mind, we have attained partially the true enlightenment. That means the perfect bodhisattva, the perfect Buddha enlightenment, which is not based on a separation, but based on non-separation, due to all being just one Dharmadhatu, in which separation is not something which is really there, but something which is constructed. And this is a knowledge which we get when we have realized what is here called pure mind. This pure mind is called the pramudita. Pramudita means a great joy. When we know that we are heading for the true highest realization, which enables us to benefit ourselves and the others without differentiation. This is indeed a very great realization. We can understand it in theory, but to know it in practice is a different matter. Our habit of differentiating self from others is so deep. So this realization of the first bhumi, of course, is much more difficult than the realization of the stream entry in the practice of the Shravakas, which is based on, so to say, correct differentiation. When we attain the pure mind, we go beyond the differentiation, so we are sure to attain the ultimate realization, which is this one mind. This one mind is covered in our case by our ignorance, but it is there in the form of the, we have explained, in the form of the womb of Tathagata, or the Buddha nature. So that much we have covered last time. Then let us go to the next. And the next is the explanation of the terms the author is using. Now, our friend Agus has sent me the translation of the Professor Lusthaus, which is indeed a great piece of scholarship. But still, I am not exactly satisfied with his terminology, even though he has done incredible uh, feast of scholarship, of gathering so much information and having read so many sutras and so much of Abhidharma. Satisfied with his So let me see. I have no his translation before me, but let me just translate myself. So he's explaining the term. The first term is the not. Wait, let me see now here. As to the meaning of connected, which is obviously samprayukta in Sanskrit, very important term. If you learn Abhidharma, always there is samprayukta and asamprayukta, connected and not connected. In the Sanskrit tradition, in Abhidharma Kosha, which all the students of Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism are bound to encounter if they want to study Buddhist philosophy and psychology, always talking in terms of samprayukta, and you have a special category of chitta viprayukta, this of samskaras, the formations not connected. I think he uses a different word, not allied or something like that. I don't remember. So it translates samprayukta. Samprayukta means linked. Yoga is a link. It means connection. It means allied. Anything you like. So as to the meaning of samprayukta, which, as you may remember, to refresh your memory, we have 6 aspects of the mind affected by ignorance, started from the 3 gross aspects of mind connected with ignorance, gross aspect because they are based on continuity of the mind, based on the 6 senses. And the 6 senses, they, so to say, they distort our picture of our experience because they are based on continuity of the mind, on our habits, and we judge reality according to our habits in the form of the seeds in our alaya consciousness, which makes the mind move. The nature of the mind is not moving, but it is moved by ignorance. So as to the Buddha, he does not need to move his mind. He just reflects all the phenomena like in the mirror. And he does not see any difference between the inner and the outer. Now we see the difference between the inner and the outer, even when we have realized the realization of the disciple. We still see the difference between the inner and the outer. According to the doctrine of the disciples, the object is before the mind. First there is an object, then comes the mind. It is technically called the object is a pure jata pachaya. It is the conditioning of mind by an object which exists. What is existing object is a great discussion in Abhidharma. Later, when you're interested, you can learn. Many different schools define many different objects. That's where Nagarjuna comes in. The sutras of great wisdom come in with the idea that the reality can only be one, and this one reality is suchness. And these true objects, they still belong to the conventional reality. They are not the ultimate reality. So in the Sanskrit tradition, you have these objects disconnected from the mind, like impermanence and so on, like the space and so on. All these objects, they are called disconnected. But here you have a different meaning. The connected here actually means that there is dualism. The object is different from the mind, and mind is different from the object. So the mind itself does not have any form. Its form is given by the mental factors. These mental factors, they are called chetasikas or chaita. That means something which belongs to the mind and which gives content to the mind. Like sensation, like perception, like will and will factors, like the differentiating consciousness. They give the content to the mind, but the mind itself has no content. It is a feeling, perception, will, which gives it a content. Very important to understand. So when it is called connected, it means that the mind and mental factors, they are different because the object and the mind is different. So they are connected with dualism. The phenomena and mind taking them are different entities because mind and the object are different. Now, when you come to the subtle aspect of experience, everything actually is happening in the mind. The objects, they cannot be experienced separated from the mind. So even the Dhammapada, which all the students of Theravada series learn by heart, we always start a discourse in Theravada by quoting some verse from Dhammapada, the verses of Dharma. First verse, most famous, Mano Pubangama Dhamma, Mano Seta, Mano Maya. All the phenomena are preceded by the mind. All the phenomena are contained in the mind. All the phenomena are led by the mind. But what separates us from this experience in the Yogacara tradition is the manas, is the individual consciousness or organ of thinking or our thinking. different person, different thinking, because of different experiences. And these different experiences, they dwell in our mind, and according to them, we then differentiate the phenomena of our experience. So when the mind and the objects that the mind think about are different, so it is connected with dualism. That means our experience is based on our continuity, which then forms the six consciousnesses, the mental consciousness, and what on the base of mental consciousness, and we see things, we hear things, we smell things, we uh, taste things. And that is why we are all different. We have different ideas, what is good, what is bad, what we want, what we don't want, don't we? And we have similar ideas because we have similar karma, we are humans. But if you ask other creators, they have a completely different ideas of what is desirable, what is not desirable, because of their different past experience and different contents of the mind, different formations. The accumulation of formations is the karma, and the karma you have learned now is based on ignorance. It moves our mind so that it starts differentiating as something that it differentiates is something really there. But for the Buddha, it is a different matter. For us, it is like that. So thus, based on the difference between defiled and pure one, the one who knows and experiences the uh, image of the object is also the same that is defiled or pure. So if we define something as defiled or pure, as desirable and undesirable, the one who experiences that object as the desirable and undesirable, as defiled and or as pure, also becomes accordingly the pure or defiled. If it is a desirable object, we become defiled by it, by clinging to it. If it is undesirable object, we become defiled by it, by rejecting it forcefully. If it's neither desirable nor non-desirable object, we become bored or search for another object. So we know we are subjected to this continuity of the mind, which then creates in us the delusion that our differentiation is something real, and we behave accordingly. So when the object we consider as pure, our mind becomes pure. When we consider it as impure, as non-desirable. Our mind becomes impure. Hmm? So there is no, simply spoken, there is no simultaneous object and subject differentiation. First is an object, then comes a subject. If everything, if it is not connected with duality, there is no such uh, understanding as the object being different from the subject or subject being different from the object. They appear simultaneously. So the one who is aware and the object of awareness, they are like two things. They don't arise as as something which is inseparable. First is object of awareness, then comes the awareness. First is attention. We make the object in the mind, then the mind moves to the object. Right? So the opposite of that is the meaning of non-connected. That means the object and the mind, they are inseparable. There is not yet a differentiation between the mind and the mental factors which make the content of the mind. So the mind, which is called in Chinese Xin Wang, the king mind, and that which belongs to the king mind, that means the retinue, the mental factors which form the content of the mind, they are not different. There is no dualism. So there is no question of object coming first and then mind referring to it. Mind and object of mind appears as one reality. So there is not dualism yet. Dualism develops from the, we have learned from the mind itself. When the mind moves due to karma, which is karmic consciousness, beginning of the ignorance is karmic consciousness. When there is karmic consciousness, then there is the seer, and when there is a seer, there is a seen, and they appear inseparable. They appear as one, not as two. Where do they appear as such? In alaya. Now, the subtle aspect of alaya are these three aspects, and we have learned the gross aspect of the alaya is the differentiation and continuity. And these five aspects together, three subtle and the two less subtle, they form the thinking or organ of thinking, which is called manas. When we think on the base of the continuity produced by thinking, then there is our world of differentiation based on the six senses, and they come together. You cannot have any seeing without a mental consciousness. You cannot have hearing. You cannot have smelling. You cannot have tasting. They always come together. So the author put them together as a six consciousnesses. Now, six consciousnesses, they are based on manas, on the organ of thinking. And the manas is based on alaya. The peculiarity of our treatise we have explained before many times, and you have to study again and again to understand. These five, our author puts them together as being the organ of thinking, manas, because when we have manas, we already have continuity, and this continuity comes from the mind itself. This continuity is not something which is innate to the mind. It comes from the karmic consciousness which moves the mind. When the mind is moved, automatically there is a seer and the seen. When there is a seer and the seen, there is continuity. And when there is continuity, this continuity is based on the alaya consciousness. So alaya consciousness becomes manas due to continuity. So when everything happens in the mind, so when the mind is moved at this very subtle stage, it still cannot differentiate between the mind, the king, which has no, which does not exist without a retinue. You don't have a king without a retinue. And this retinue are the mental factors, feeling, perception, and so on. And this mind and this retinue of the king, the mental perception, they have not yet been divided. So there is not yet dualism. I want it, I don't want it. Because there is everything happens in the mind. This alaya mind is the resultant mind. It has to be resultant, otherwise it will not keep the previous experiences. The active mind cannot keep previous experiences. The six consciousnesses, they appear and disappear in every moment. Therefore, they cannot keep the previous experiences. That which can keep the previous experiences, that is only something which is the base of continuity. So the base of continuity cannot be active mind. The base of continuity can only be a resultant mind called vipaka. In Theravada, this vipaka is called bhavanga, course of existence. In this tradition, it is called alaya. And alaya is responsible for continuity. When there is continuity, the six senses pick up on the base of continuity. When they pick up, they already connected with attachment, and they pick up according to the concepts. We don't cling to reality, we cling to our concepts of reality. And because we have different concepts of reality, we have different types of clinging. That's why we have different manas, different organs of thinking, different continuity of the mind. Because we have different ideas of what is pure, desirable, and what is impure, what is not desirable, what we should reject, what we should cling to. Very different ideas. So we are defiled by our holding to the manas, to the thinking, which is the job of the six consciousnesses. When the six consciousnesses appear, they already attach to continuity, attach to thinking. So next comes expression, the defiled mind, Rang Xin. So when we have learned the alaya has the aspect of awareness and the aspect of non-awareness, the aspect of body and the aspect of non-body. Remember, before we have learned that the aspect of body has the aspect of pure wisdom and has the aspect of unthinkable karma. We have learned before. Now we have our mind is not connected with this aspect of body. So it follows defilement. When the mind is not connected with the aspect of body in the alaya, which is connected to the suchness, which is the essence of the mind. So the mind is following defilement. So this is called the defiled mind, Rang Xin. And this defiled mind, Rang Xin, refers to the veil given by kleshas, klesha avarana. Again, a technical term. We are not enlightened because we have the veil of kleshas, of defilements, and we have the veil of ignorance. That's why we are in trouble. In Chinese, very wonderful expression, fan now. We have fan now, we are fan now, we are in turmoil because our wisdom eye is veiled. This is called avarana. In Chinese, they translate avarana, veil, by obstacle, jang. So there is fan now jang, and this defiled mind, troubled mind, is veiled by this obstruction, and this obstruction of the trouble, of chaos of mind, of non-appeasement of mind. obstructs our wisdom eye, our knowledge of suchness. So it is stirred. Our suchness is stirred. When suchness is stirred, our eye of knowledge, so to say, is not open, because the suchness is stirred. Like if you put clay or earth into water, it will be stirred and you don't see anything clearly. If the mind is agitated by kleshas, by the turmoil of the mind, then we don't see suchness. So we are not in clarity and peace because our mind is agitated, agitated by this karmic consciousness, connected with the aspect of the seer and the seen as being something different. But all this develops in the mind itself. So when our mind is agitated, we cannot see suchness. Impossible. Because we cannot see suchness, we have to think. We have to engage in thinking. And when we engage in thinking, we cling to our differentiation. And we cling to our judgment. This is right, this is wrong, this should be, this should not be. Please experience, see by yourself if it is so or not. Once our thinking is in movement, then we rely on our judgment, and our judgment are based on our concepts. They are not based on the reality as it is. And the reality as it is one reality. That's why it is called suchness. So we have ignorance. So the author explains what is ignorance. He has explained what is the defiled mind, meaning of the defiled mind. It means that we have the obstacle of the kleshas, the obstacles of the mental turmoil. And this mental turmoil obstructs or veils the root knowledge of suchness. You have the root knowledge of suchness. That is why the author has explained that in order to understand suchness, you have to understand that when the mind moves, when we start thinking, we are already in a way separated from the suchness. We have to go deep into the experience of non-thinking. But in order, paradoxically, in order to go deep into experience of non-thinking, we have to learn to think properly. If we don't learn to think properly, we will never learn not to think. So we learn to think properly by hearing properly, by contemplating properly of what we have heard. Then we can experience it without thinking in samadhi directly. So we do not think to experience the things that we have thought about properly. to think about properly, already presupposes we have mindfulness and we have concentration. Otherwise, we cannot really hear properly and contemplate properly. This is what the Mahayanas Abhidharma explains. Already for hearing properly, we need concentration. There is a famous story in the Dhammapada. I should tell you a little bit of stories to make my the Abhidharma will be dry without the stories. There is a commentary in the Dhammapada, which I like especially in Pali, about four laymen listening to the discourse of the Buddha in Rajgir, in the bamboo grove. When you visit India, you can go there. I have lived not very far from there. So these four laymen are listening to the discourse of the Buddha. The one listens with deep concentration and with deep peace in the mind. The other one is playing with they are sitting on the tree, so he's playing with the branches. The other one is playing with the earth, digging the earth with his fist, and the other one is digging the earth with his finger. So the four of them sit under the tree, and the Buddha is making a discourse. And as usually, Ananda has to be present with each and every lecture of the Buddha, the discourse of the Buddha. So after the discourse, these four go away, and Ananda with Buddha return to their monastery. And Ananda, as usual, asked the Buddha, what is the meaning? Now they were four lay people, one listening in deep concentration and with such a peace and clarity in the face, and the other ones listening, but one playing with the branches, one playing with the earth with his fist, another is playing with the finger. So the Buddha says it is very clear. The one who was listening with deep concentration, awareness, and with peace in mind, and with such a clarity and light in his complexion, he got enlightened while I was talking, because he could penetrate the meaning of what I was saying. It was not for him a concept, it was a direct experience. And he has practiced concentration before, so he could match this concept with reality, and he became part of this reality. Now the other one who was playing with the branches, he has been a monkey in his innumerable past existences. So this habit of the monkey, he has no way of abandoning. So he could not understand what I was saying. That's why he was not could not concentrate. So he continued in his old habits, playing with the branch, because he was monkey for so many past existences. The one who was playing with a fist, he was a pig in his previous life, and this habit of the pig was so strong in him, he could not concentrate. So he was trying to always to dig with not now he has not a big nose, but he has a fist, so he could not dig with the nose, but he duck with a fist in the earth because of his previous habit of the pig, and the one who uh, uh, dug the earth with his finger, he was a earthworm in his previous existence. So he could not get rid of this habit. He could not concentrate. So he was just following his previous habit. No way to understand the meaning of what I was saying. But who knows? Maybe in some future existences, they may somehow remember. But now they are, due to their previous habit, due to their previous habits, uh, installed by the continuity of the mind. They have no way to understand what I was saying. So this is how we work. Because our mind is not quiet, we don't understand. And because we don't understand, we don't have the wisdom from hearing, we don't have the wisdom for contemplation. So we cannot experience what we have heard and what we have contemplated in samadhi and become one with it. So comes the expression of avidya. What is avidya? Avidya means literally nescience. Not know. In Chinese, they translate no clarity. Wu Ming. Wu Ming Ming also means clarity, but it also means science. It also means understanding. It also means clarity. So no understanding, no science, no clarity. What is the meaning of that? So no clarity is Gneya Avarana, is the nescience in regards to the object of the knowledge. In Chinese, they translate zhi, the obstruction to knowledge. In Sanskrit, it is obstruction in regards to the objects of knowledge. So, because we have not peace in the mind, our mind is stirred. So we do not see things as they are. Here in this case, a suchness, because we rely on our thinking, we rely on our habits. And because we don't have the habit of a peace mind, therefore we do not see things as they are. Seeing things as they are means vipassana. We do not see things as they are because our mind is not appeased. We have to have samadhi to see things as they are. So because we are not in samadhi, we have obstructions in regards to the objects of the knowledge. And so our knowledge of the world is obstructed. Therefore, we have the ziran ye zhi. It can obstruct the function of the natural acting in the world. When we have appeased mind, when we can deeply relax, we can act naturally, spontaneously, without attention. So, according to this understanding, if the this klesha avarana, the veil of troubled mind, is the obstacle to the root wisdom. Only when we don't think, when we don't need to think, when our mind is appeased, when our mind is appeased, when our mind is samadhi, and our mind is in balance, we do not need to think much. When we do not need to think much, so we are connected to the root wisdom. Root wisdom is a wisdom of suchness. All that we experience is not separable from suchness. And when we are not separable from suchness, then we will not be obstructed in regards to the objects of knowledge. So first, we have to remove the obstacle of this third mind. Then we can remove the Jnana Avarana, the obstruction in regard to the objects of knowledge, or in regard to knowledge as they translate it into Chinese. Then we can act naturally in the world without attention, with complete clarity, and without clinging to differentiation. Because when we don't think, we are, so to say, we can go beyond the concepts. And we don't cling to reality as it is. Reality is inseparable. We cling to our concepts of reality, which make reality something classified according to our concepts. So in Buddhism, we differentiate the root wisdom, the Mula Jnana, root wisdom, Kenpenj, and Hotaj, the Prishtalabdha Jnana, the knowledge which comes after enlightenment. Now, in Chinese tradition, we differentiate between the sudden enlightenment approach and the gradual enlightenment approach. This scripture, same as in Zen, it connects the sudden enlightenment approach. We are all enlightened. We are all Buddhas from the very beginning. We have never been separated from the oneness. Only ignorance separates us from oneness. This is approach of sudden enlightenment. And this approach we can only use when we have samadhi. The Chan or Zen literally means samadhi, dhyana. And dhyana means we don't rely on differentiation. We don't rely on thinking, because differentiation, we need to differentiate, but we do not need to cling to differentiation. We cling to differentiation because of ignorance. And that is very important to see. So the first, we have to appease the mind. When we appease the mind, we are linked, as the scripture has explained before, we are linked to suchness. When we don't think, we are linked to suchness. When we start thinking, If we hold to thinking, we are dividing ourselves from suchness. This is explained especially clearly in the Tantric tradition and in the Hawaiian tradition in China. We are never separated from the state of the Buddha. The mind is a Buddha. If there is anywhere the Buddha, it is in the mind. And it is the very nature, true nature of the mind is a Buddha. So the essence of the mind, we cannot be, even if we are most ignorant beings, we can never be separated from the essence of the mind. It is impossible because the essence is something that does not change. That which changes is the characteristics, but it is not the essence. So we have learned in the beginning that the Mahayana, this one mind, has a great essence, great characteristics, and great use. And that is Mahayana. So if our mind is in peace, that is, we are connected with the true nature of the mind. And when we experience it, even for a while, it is enlightenment, satori, but it is not a real enlightenment, it is adopting to enlightenment. It is adopting to enlightenment means adopting to the true nature of the mind, which we can never lose, even in our stupidity and ignorance and non-science. We cannot lose the nature of the mind. And the obstruction to the objects of knowledge is called Prishtalabdha Jnana. It comes after the samadhi. When we have samadhi, after that we can remove the obstacle of knowledge. So first we have to remove the obstacle of the stirring in the mind, then we can remove the obstacle of to knowledge. And knowledge means the knowledge of the object. What object? The worldly objects. Because we have learned in the beginning the true object, the suchness, you cannot speak about, you cannot grasp, you cannot hold, you cannot attach to. What we can attach to, what we can dispute about, what we can differentiate, what we can hold to, that is a worldly reality. The highest reality is the highest reality because we cannot hold it. If we hold it, it is not the highest reality. And samadhi means a state of the mind in which we don't hold. That is a true samadhi. First, we have to learn to hold the objects in a samadhi, that is the worldly samadhi, and then we can learn the supermundane samadhi. The supermundane samadhi it is not really supermundane samadhi because it can exist only in the world. It cannot exist out of the world. It can only exist in relation to the five aggregates of existence, which is our world. So the when we understand that the essence in Chinese tea and the Jung of the mind, they are inseparable, then we have opening to the knowledge of the Buddha, which is knowledge in all aspects. We just reflect the reality and we know differentiations, but we don't hold to differentiations. So both disturbance in the mind and disturbance in the mind is the cause to our obstruction of knowledge. Both, when they have been removed, we become the Buddhas. So due to defiled mind, there is a seen, there is a seer and the seen. There is the one who sees and what is seen. Thus, the author writes, the illusionary mind, the untrue mind, which is moved by karma. Karma causes the mind to differentiate between the seer and the seen as two different entities. When there is seer and the seen, as we have learned before, then there is a true object as something existing there. I have explained before, I explained again and again and again. In Sanskrit, the object means alambana. Alambana means something we can hang our mind on. Lam means to hang. And the object is also called gochara. Sanskrit, very wonderful language. In Chinese, it is translated as Tingtie. The gochara literally means pasture for the cow. Our mind is like a cow, and in order to function, it needs a pasture. If it has no pasture, the cow, if it has nothing to eat, it will die. Similarly, if our mind does not move in the objects, it will die. Like if we don't train the muscles, they will stop having a clear function, right? So we need the root knowledge, and root knowledge is knowledge based on the samadhi, on the mind which is not subjected to staring. And we need the knowledge of the objects based on this mind. So first comes the samadhi, the state of peace and balance. Samadhi means state of peace and balance. Then comes the true unobstructed knowledge of the objects. And here it means the objects not separated from the nature of the mind, which is suchness. So whenever there is any object, any posture which we grasp as something being really there, it goes counter to the true nature of the mind, which is equal and which is inseparable from suchness. So, due to mind grasping, there is conditionality. When there is conditionality, it is rooted in erroneous notion of the subject and the object. There is no conditionality without the erroneous notion of the real subject and the real object. But the real subject and the real objects, they are creation of the mind. Which mind? Which is stirred. When it is stirred, it does not see objects as they are, inseparated from the mind. Never separated from the mind. And never separated from the true nature of the mind, which is equal, which is not based on clinging. Clinging is based on the notion of the real object. And the notion of the real object is based on the notion of the real subject. There is no real object without the real subject. Such a thing does not exist. So there has to be a real subject, notion of the real subject, in order that we experience a real object. If there is no notion of the real subject, we will never experience any real object. And this relativity in Buddhism, dependent origination, starts with ignorance, because ignorance moves the mind. We are dependent on the will formations. When we are dependent on the will formations based on ignorance, we are dependent on the differentiating mind. When we are dependent on the differentiating mind, we are dependent on our sensations. When we are dependent on our sensations, we are dependent on our clinging. And we are dependent on our clinging, we are dependent on our karma, which we accumulate again and again. Hmm? This is the meaning of dependent origination. And here it is explained in a very wonderful way. So this conditionality is the product of the karmic aspect of the mind, at least in this tradition. And the karmic aspect of the mind, which makes the mind move, appears together with subject and object, but so far only in the mind itself. But due to continuity of the mind, then this conditionality appears as something real, outside, inside. So, what is the conclusion? What is the sudden enlightenment approach to our experience, to our meditation? In substance, that means that there is only one substance, the suchness. All phenomena are already equal. This is to be experienced. First, we experience it spontaneously, just for an instance. We experience it that all this differentiation we are hanging to are unreal. This is Zen. But yet we continue to live in this differentiation, but they are completely unreal. They are created by the karmic mind. And due to this karmic mind, the nature of the mind is not revealed to us. This is the message of the scripture. It is not revealed to us because we are subjected to stirring of the mind, which comes from our karma. When the mind is stirred, we cannot see reality as it is. Impossible. So we are separated from suchness. We don't see our uh, inside and outside the world as being one, inseparable. Hmm? So, in the true mind, which is suchness, there is not any real object or subject arising. So there is arising, but illusionary arising. One cannot deny arising. There is arising, but illusionary arising due to thinking. If we do not think, what real arising, what real image will be there? In order that something arises, there has to be a real image which we hold to, which we grasp. So the ignorance in this tradition means non-awareness that nothing really arises in reality. And that is a true wisdom. It does not mean it does not arise. It arises, but in the conventional reality, not in suchness. And the conventional reality is not separated from the suchness because all differences in suchness, they are not real. Because the differences are not real, the arising is not real. The real arising is due to, in this tradition, due to non-awareness. Non-awareness of what? Non-awareness of the true wisdom. The true wisdom is the wisdom of the one mind in this tradition. We have learned this in the beginning. And this one mind has the great essence, great characteristics, and great use. So, and this non-awareness itself is illusionary in nature. The things truly arise due to non-awareness, and this non-awareness is illusionary in the nature. If non-awareness was not illusionary in the nature, we would never become enlightened. That's why Buddha explains the dependent origination, which explains both way to realization and way to ignorance, starting with avidya, with non-science, non-clarity. Our mind is stirred. So we start relying on thinking. When we rely on thinking, we rely on the continuity of the mind. When we rely on the continuity of the mind, we cling to concepts and we cling to reality as something being really there, not seeing the illusionary nature of our ignorance. So the illusionary nature of ignorance is the wisdom. The wisdom, this is Chinese philosophy, it comes in Taoism also. Wisdom cannot be separated from ignorance. Wisdom is in regard to ignorance. Why? Because clinging and the true arising is contrary to the very nature of the mind, which is equality. That's why the mind can accept anything, the good things, bad things, the foul things, badly smelling, the fragrance. It can accept anything because its nature is no nature of equality. Equality means no preference. But the preference exists, surely, but due to the continuity. And continuity is due to the organ of thinking which separates us from the one mind. So we come very close to what the Western mystics also have described. That which is true is beyond holding, beyond grasping, beyond thinking. That's why it contains the whole of reality. That's why the first translator of this treatise was a Christian missionary, which translated this one mind as being the God. Not bad, but it is not a complete understanding. Why it is not the complete understanding? Because in this tradition, the ignorance cannot be separated from wisdom. And that is a true insight. So when the mind is stirred, it cannot see things as they are, inseparable from suchness. So it cannot also see the cause of samsara. This explains the cause of samsara. The cause of samsara is the karmic mind. The karmic mind moves the mind. When the mind is moved, immediately there is the seer and the seen. When there is seer and the seen, we start believing that there are objects to be differentiated, which are really there. When we believe that there are objects to be differentiated, which are really there, as being separated from the mind, we get involved in clinging and in concepts, and we rely on the continuity of the mind, which then form the six consciousnesses: mental consciousness and our seeing, hearing, smelling, and so on. We already, when we hear, we have the idea of what we want to hear, what we don't want to hear. When we see color, shape. We already have the idea of what we want to see, what we don't want to see, right? This is a mental consciousness, which is based on continuity, and continuity is manas, organ of thinking or thinking. So next, we better finish here because the next is a different topic. We have explained the cause of samsara, that is the cause of the reality of the impermanent mind. The impermanent mind has no any real reality which we can grasp, because it appears and disappears at the same moment anyway. And this appearance in this tradition is not real. It is illusionary, because it is based on the images which are creation of the mind itself. So our reality is not different from the dream. So only true mind can know things as they really are. And we are separated from this true mind because we rely on continuity. So the next, the author explains how this, what was the cause of samsara, how this samsara works, how the true reality and ignorance mutually influence each other. This is the next topic, and we will talk about it on next Saturday. How the ignorance and which causes us to be in the impermanent mind as something which is really there, and how the suchness there interconnect and influence each other. And this is what we are. The interconnection between the wisdom and ignorance. And the wisdom belongs to the suchness, which is always there. And suchness permeates ignorance, and ignorance permeates suchness. This is a condition of the uh, us non-realized persons. When we become realized person, then there is nothing except suchness. Okay, so that much for today. Let us, as usual, transfer merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then we will meet next Saturday, the same time. And please prepare some good questions which can be enlightening for all of us. I hope we can have a more mutual intercourse so that we can get more clarity. Give me a challenge. Only if I have a challenge, I can think more clearly. If I don't have the challenge, I may again get stuck in my own differentiations. So it's very good to give me a challenge by asking some good questions which you have thought about. So let us finish here. The time is over also. So let me transfer the merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all the good we do for ourselves be exactly the same as the good we try to do for everything else. 愿你这功德普及一切，我等你以众生皆空成佛道。So may the merits of today's practice spread to all beings so that we can attain all the state of ultimate clarity. Om. Okay, so that much for today's lesson. See you next week on Saturday, the same time as usual. And in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week. And see you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Ami
Bye bye,
Tafo.
Pastor.
See
Ami
you.
Tafo.
Ami Tafo.
Thank you,
See
Pastor.
you.
Okay.